consistently explosive question addressed not only by Christianity but virtually all world religions is that of good and evil. Over the centuries, followers of Jesus held firmly to the concept of original sin, that human beings inherited a sinful nature because of the sin of Adam and Eve, and needed the free redemption offered by Jesus to set things right with God. Today, many people no longer believe in the concept of original sin, or even the concept of evil. So-called New Age religions, for example, hold that since God is good and He created everything, there is no evil, only the absence of good.
G.K. Chesterton once said that people have given up on the idea of original sin when it's the only doctrine of Christianity that can be empirically proven. And I think there's a profound truth about that. That is, we just look out at the world. We look at even Hitler or Stalin or Pol Pot or Idi Amin or people like that. We can see the terrible evil, or just read our newspapers or watch the television about the evil that is there, and to say that ultimately the world is perfect, as many New Agers do, or that there is no such thing as good or evil, or Joseph Campbell verified a teaching of a guru that we must say yes to things like brutality and vulgarity. When you really look at that kind of thing, it's just, I think it's horrifying.
If you asked me how I would defend in a court of law that Jesus was not the Messiah, I would point to the world. I'd point to hunger and starvation, to suffering, to disease, to malice, to hatred, to battles, to wars, to the dark side of it. I'd point to the life in our city streets. I'd point to the murder of young children to death by disease, famine. And I would say this is a world which is not redeemed.
In the end, perhaps the most radical byproduct of the claims made by Jesus and His followers is that God measures man by what he believes rather than by what he does. That runs counter to the widespread notion that being good is what gets you to heaven.
Now, I think what we would want to say to those people who believe that niceness is an adequate take on life is that niceness in and of itself doesn't really get you through a confrontation with radical evil, and it doesn't get you to the power of genuinely life-giving, self-giving love. It's just niceness. We don't want to demean your niceness, but we want you to take that experience of trying to be good and locate it in a larger, richer, and we believe more revelatory context.
An anonymous author once wrote of Jesus, "He never wrote a book, never had a family, never owned a home, never held an office, never went to college. He never had an income, never visited a big city, never traveled more than 200 miles from where he was born. He did none of the things one usually associates with greatness and had no credentials but himself." And yet, more than 1900 years after his death, Jesus stands as the central figure in human history.
My whole argument would be that there is no figure of Christ available apart from what Christianity has. This figure has served to define the Western civilization in its late classical, medieval, and even early modern, Reformation, Renaissance phases. And therefore it becomes a central obsession.
The encounter with Christ is not the encounter with an argument. It's not the encounter with a proof. It's not even the encounter with a text. It's the encounter with a person. It's an encounter with the embodiment of the love of God in history. And to say yes to that is what we mean by Christian faith.
Jesus cannot be tied down or bound into one small, narrow, little box. That the reality of who Jesus was, the reality of who God is more than any human being can encompass and any human being can describe or any human being can even understand.
That